In 1975, a Kodak engineer invented the digital camera. His manager told him, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." 37 years later, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. That engineer's name was Steve Sasson, and what he built would eventually destroy the company that paid him to build it. To understand what happened, you have to understand how dominant Kodak was. At its peak, in the mid-1990s, Kodak controlled 90% of film sales in the United States, 145,000 employees, revenue of $16 billion, a market cap of $31 billion. Kodak's senior VP of research told the Wall Street Journal in 1985, "It is very hard to find anything like color photography that is legal." He was talking about the margins. Film carried margins of around 70 to 80%. Kodak wasn't just a company. It was a money machine disguised as a camera business. Steve Sasson joined Kodak in 1973. A year later, his supervisor gave him a task: figure out what a new type of sensor called a charged coupled device could actually do. What Sasson built looked like a science experiment. 8 pounds of wires, lenses, and batteries bolted to a cassette recorder. It took 23 seconds to capture a single black and white image so low in resolution it barely qualified as a photograph. Nobody in the room knew it yet, but film had just become obsolete. Then he showed it to his managers. The executives understood the implications immediately, and they were not excited. Sasson described the reaction as curiosity and skepticism. Management's message, in his own words, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." Kodak did patent the technology 3 years later. They acknowledged the invention, but they did not develop it into a product, because developing it meant destroying themselves. Here is the problem Kodak faced. Film had 70 to 80% margins. Digital had none. Every digital photo taken was one fewer roll of film purchased. If Kodak invested in digital and it succeeded, they would cannibalize their most profitable business. If they didn't, someone else eventually would. They chose to protect what they had. It is a trap that has destroyed nearly every dominant company in history. It even has a name: the innovator's dilemma. The better a company becomes at what it does, the harder it is to abandon it for something new. Kodak wasn't blind. They understood exactly what digital meant. The threat wasn't abstract. It was a precise calculation. And every time they ran the calculation, the answer came back the same. Film wins. So they kept making film. Better film. Higher margin film. And they waited. Film sales peaked globally in 2001. Then they fell. Fast. By 2003, digital cameras were outselling film cameras in the United States. By 2005, consumer film was just 25% of Kodak's revenue, and still falling. Kodak tried to pivot. Digital cameras, printing, pharmaceuticals. They acquired companies, laid off tens of thousands of workers. But every pivot was funded by the film revenue that was disappearing. On January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 145,000 employees at its peak. 47,000 at the end. A company worth $31 billion, now listing liabilities of nearly $7 billion against assets of $5 billion. And here is the detail that makes this story impossible to forget. The same year Kodak filed for bankruptcy, Instagram, with 13 employees, was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion. Photography didn't die. It was worth more than ever. Kodak just wasn't part of it. What destroyed Kodak wasn't ignorance. What destroyed Kodak was success. When your margins are 70%, every alternative looks like a downgrade. When you own 90% of a market, every threat looks manageable. You don't ignore the future. You keep running the numbers and deciding it's not worth the risk yet. Until it is. And by then, it's too late. Steve Sasson spent 33 years at Kodak. He invented the device that ended his company's reason for existing. He stayed anyway. He watched his invention change the world. He received the National Medal of Technology from the President of the United States. And he watched his company fail to change with it. Kodak didn't fail because they missed the future. They failed because they understood it perfectly and chose the present instead.